Welcome to the Good Ride, a place where if you can't try before you buy, you at least have this guy. And today we're talking about the Bataleon Goliath. I rode this with Union Force, Battalion Acid Boa boots, and Ride Deadbolts. I got on this late spring, but I got some pretty varied conditions, even a little bit of powder. When it comes to sizing, this 156 fits me really well. It handled my weight well enough, and it really matched up with my boot size. I often compared this against the 159 Goliath Plus, and while that worked well for me too, I liked this shorter width. It was easier to control, it was easier to butter with and play around with, and matched my boot size a little bit better. So this would be the size I'd get if I was going to buy one. However, if you generally prefer a little bit bigger all mountain board for a little more float, a little more speed, you could easily go 159 if you were my specs. So let's talk snowboard dating app and some things that'll make you want to swipe right. This is incredibly poppy. This is super forgiving. It has setback inserts for a lot of easier directional float in powder. This butters really well for having lifted sides. Some things that'll make you want to swipe left. This edge hold is lacking for how most people ride. While it's not that chattery, all this pop can get really bucky and bouncy in soft, uneven snow. And as you know, we put out honest, objective, unbiased reviews without any brand oversight, and we can do that thanks to the support of shops like Blauer Board Shop. They have a strong presence online, so if you want to support the Good Ride and keep objective reviews flowing, check out Blauer Board Shop, click through our links, and see if something works for you there. So let's talk shape. This is a directional twin. The nose seems to be a touch longer than the tail, slightly different shapes, a little less surface area, but still the same width in tip and tail. So when you're on groomers centered on side cut, this feels almost like a true twin and has a very centered feel underfoot. When you set this back, yeah, it gets a touch more directional, but you feel more like you're on a setback twin. Now take a look at this camber. The first thing you notice with this TBT is there isn't a single part of this edge that has contact with the snow. That's something that takes a little time to get used to. Once I did, I really enjoyed this forgiving nature, but it can feel edgeless and washy at first until you realize you really need to put your weight between the feet. But as it stands, it's super forgiving. It's almost nearly impossible to catch an edge. So a beginner to an expert could ride this and it'd be fine. It wouldn't be boring for an expert, and it wouldn't be challenging or catchy for a beginner. Now, when it comes to edge hold, this was one of the toughest things for me. In good snow, it's fine, but I had a hard spring morning, and none of the Bataleon boards, including the Goliath, could do very well. It actually was unsettling as to how much this edge slid out. There are many times when I hit a harder patch of ice and the board just slid out. If you live on the East Coast, this is not for you. This has a very medium-ish flex. You can see there's almost as much bend in the middle as there is in the tail. The nose is pretty similar to the tail. And what I found on snow is this butters pretty easy, and this flat section here really allows me to lock in a butter, and I never felt like it washed out like some spoon noses do. Then on top of that, this just has so much pop and energy. Yes, the Plus is a little better, but they're both shades of excellent pop. These things just spring on an ollie higher than any other board I've tried this year, except for other Bataleon boards. And it's got this rubbery yet poppy flex where it can flex a lot, but then it snaps back a lot when you engage on an ollie, it's a really dynamic flex. When it comes to uneven snow, I found that this did fine in hard uneven snow, micro bumpy snow that can often send chatter up into a board and into your joints and really fatigue you over a day of riding. This doesn't do that. However, in thick, soft, uneven snow, sometimes I felt like I was on a bucking bronco, and I'm not a cowboy, so that was difficult. I just felt like I couldn't get this board under control. Even though I can turn this quickly and control it in good conditions, I wouldn't want to take this through a bumpy tree line because I'm afraid it would just buck me out of my line and into a tree. So while it isn't chattery and fatiguing, all this pop in this board can really mess with your line when you're riding. I felt the same thing with the Goliath Plus and all the Bataleon boards. They're not chattery, but they just have so much pop. Sometimes the board thinks it's jumping when it's not. And when it comes to speed, I felt like this side cut was friendly for speed. This board isn't super damp, but it's competent for a straight line here and there, and it wasn't a problem with a moderate straight line. Base glide was good, especially when this was waxed before I tested it. Now it's not, and you can see what it looks like after several days of riding without a re-wax. I don't have any complaints. I'd say it's good, not great. When it comes to turning, this initiated a turn really quick. I really enjoyed how fast I could get it edge to edge. It wasn't super fast, but it's definitely medium quick for sure. And when I got it on edge, it was a pretty balanced side cut that allowed me to do a little bit of everything. The one thing though is it really popped out of a turn. It's not super stiff torsionally. It's not like a carver's board, but if you're like me and you like moderate speed carves, you like to play around with your feet and twist it coming out through a carve, it's pretty good. But it definitely needs a center weighted turn. I found that this lifted tech just didn't like back foot weighting out of a turn or front foot weighting out of a turn. I always found it best to keep as much weight and be as perfectly centered as you could be. When it comes to getting directional float, I love a setback insert. It just transforms this from being a centered stance mountain freestyle board only for people who ride switch in powder as much as they ride directional to being a board that gives you a little taste of that free ride world and allows you a more setback, easy, floaty ride. This TBT is not like a lot of lifted sides. It goes well into the effective edge, and you can see it throughout here. It really does feel like a boat, and it really helps compensate for all this camber here. It was right there with a lot of my favorite all mountain boards. Now, if you use these setback inserts, it's at a 22.5 inch stance width, and you can get 2.875 inches back from center of board. That's really good. One thing I want to mention is I didn't choose to ride the Bataleon Goliath with the Astro or the Atom binding that I got to test. They work with setback inserts, but as you can see, this disc only just barely fits these full-size inserts. So I couldn't slide it this way or that way. And so because this is a 22.5 inch stance width, that's way too wide for me. That's an inch wider than what I normally ride. So instead, I got my forces with really big discs. So you can see the difference in comparison. Not only will they fit here, but if you turn them sideways, they slide this way or that way a good bit. So I took a Union Force instead of a Bataleon, slid it as far back as I could, and took this and slid it forward a little bit and got closer to my stance width, and it helped a lot. It feels great riding switch either way. I didn't really go lap the park with this. I'm just too old for that shit these days. But this is an excellent board for hitting kickers. I really thought all this lifted tech would make approaching a kicker feel weird. As long as you're center weighted on this board, you can set an edge into launching and you can launch flat from this, and it just pops you off of things like a champ. I think this would do a pretty good job jibbing for what this is. You can do a lot better in Batalion's line if you go to some softer freestyle twins, but I think TBT's design works well with jibbing. This is not the board I want to ride in pipe unless it's soft and slushy. In the past, I rode the Bataleon Goliath in the pipe on a soft spring day, and it was an absolute treat because it was just so forgiving. I could even butter on the side of a pipe wall and not worry about catching my edge. So there are some times where you can ride pipe, but overall, stay with jumps and jibs. So overall, other than being pretty bucky and bouncy in uneven snow and having limited grip in hard snow, this is an amazing good snow ride. This pop is otherworldly. I haven't discovered anything else like this. Bataleon has some really amazing things going on for it. It might take a little while to get used to this, and it needs a center weighted rider, but the pop, the forgivingness, the versatility on groomers and powder is very good, and I think this could work for a lot of riders willing to try something new. This just doesn't feel like other snowboards. Some people are going to absolutely love this and it's going to change them forever. Others are going to want to go back to normal boards. So I leave that up to you to decide what kind of person you are.